There are some pieces of music that I think our fans look forward to, whether it be something like the Blue Garden, something heavy and with some prog rock in it, that takes off and travels and is loose enough and allows the band to get to know each other. That's the key for me, is not being so tight where the songs are arranged mechanically. I like it loose, and I want to hear what other people's souls want to play.
So this is Tom for Ghost Cult, and I am really delighted to be joined by musician, songwriter, producer, singer Chris Goss, whose band Masters of Reality have recently put out their first album in 16 years, The Archer, on Mascot Records. And for my money, for what it's worth, I think that it's up there with the very best material that the band has ever done. So I am delighted to be able to talk about the album and a bit of the band's history with its creator, Chris Goss. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
I like the name Ghost Cult. Very good.
Yeah, I guess now that I think about it, it feels like it sort of fits your aesthetic.
Yeah, maybe that's why I like it.
So I do want to gush about the latest record, but and I will at length. But I want to clarify one thing with you, which kind of blew my mind. I didn't realize until recently. Did you form Masters of Reality all the way back in like 1980 or 1981?
Yes.
And so, at what point did you sort of start building together material that would actually end up on your self-titled album in 1988?
That material started building in the mid 80s. We started out in 81 with a drum machine, synthesizer, and heavy guitar. It was a two-piece outfit. And not realizing, at the time, I mean, it was done because of convenience at the time of just having this small outfit that did weird heavy music, and with a drum beat behind it. And it was a pretty drunken, crazy experience, actually, and I think it was a foreshadowing of where we weren't of the ilk of Nine Inch Nails or Marilyn Manson, but that was the kind of vibe that we had back then when we were like an electronic two-piece band. I was a club DJ at the time, and I loved Kraftwerk and Giorgio Moroder's work and repetitious electronic music. And mixing that together with heavy guitars was kind of thrilling for me, because I always liked heavy guitar music as well. So that was the intention. And then by the mid 80s, it started to become a bit more song oriented, because I think that's where you drift to anyway when you love songs. And then a real drummer was brought into the picture, and then the material from the new album, or from the first album, started to develop in the mid 80s. Yeah.
And so I know that you came and toured for this latest record in Europe and in the UK, and unfortunately I missed the chance to come see you guys play.
Bad
So
boy.
I know, I hope I'm not going to end up regretting it. I hope you will be back, because I definitely won't miss the opportunity next time. But thinking about that tour and deciding on the set list, obviously you're promoting the Archer, and the album is full of great tracks to play. But I wondered, from your point of view, when you were figuring out the set list, are there songs from the Masters of Reality catalog where you're just like, okay, we have to play these live? Or, what was kind of the decision making that you figured out the set list on?
It's an interesting question, because a lot of it has to do with logistics and the amount of rehearsal time available. My band is scattered all over the earth, and for us to get together before a tour is a lot of traveling even before the tour. So, in the case of the last tour, in particular, I can sum it up by saying that I got bronchitis during in the second day of rehearsal, and these are five people that had never been in the same room together before playing. And so the rehearsal time was cut down to a minimum. I got sick right off the bat. And bronchitis, when you're a singer, is not too good. And so we had obviously put a set list a rough one together before the rehearsals started, and they were astute enough to get it together while I was ailing. And in any case, yeah, there are some pieces of music that I think the our fans look forward to, whether it be something like the Blue Garden, something heavy and with with some prog rock in it, that takes off and travels and is loose enough and allows the band to get to know each other. That's the key for me, is having is not being so tight where the songs are arranged mechanically. I like it loose, and I want to hear what other people's souls want to play. And so, yeah, the set list is built around the idea of maybe we can go off somewhere different every night. So it's a tough one because it's funny. I was just listening to some songs from our catalog that I'd like to do on the next tour, and so it's like, a matter of like, oh well, we haven't done that in a while. Let's pull that one out and see what happens. So yeah, that's how it's done, by kind of by feel.
Mm. No, I love that description of wanting to hear what other people's souls want to play. I think that's very evocative.
Got to be that way.
And so you mentioned that for the band that you're bringing together to tour the record, they hadn't been in the same room together. Does that imply that the players on the Archer are not actually your touring band?
Most of them are. Alan Johannes played guitar, a lot of guitar on the Archer, and he was unable to do the last tour with us. And I wanted to get keyboards involved with the last tour as well. And so I had to get a lead guitar player and a keyboard player, and I knew them well for years and years. The two associated with the city of Ghent in Belgium. I've done so much work with Ghent over the years. And now I think one lives in Antwerp. And in any case, yeah, so those two guys were brand new, and they were very astute and fans of the music. And uh, they didn't play on the album, but that I wanted to evolve. If so, they play on the next record. I'd love to have the whole band that's playing live be involved in the music in the studio as well. But my bass player Paul Powell and drummer John Leamy were on the record, so it was everyone except Alan, actually.
Right. Okay. And just thinking about, what you were saying before about liking to be quite loose on stage and sort of not being too restrictive about what's going to occur. That makes me wonder, when you were touring this record, did you find that the certain tracks evolved in different ways that you maybe didn't expect over the course of the tour?
Uh, yeah, comically almost, when I was, kind of mentally, I had a fever on stage for a lot of the tour, so I would screw up, and usually towards the beginning of the set when you're getting your pacing together, and how the band found their way through the mess that I made, I have no idea. So yeah, that was good practice for them anyway. I'd be singing the wrong verse in the wrong place, and somehow they managed to follow along. So but that's the exception to the rule. As we play more together, I look forward to what we'll bring together. And and the ability, especially with the new guitarist Steve Janssen, to be able to, as Keith Richards puts it, weave together with him. He calls it the ancient form of weaving, and it's like when you're almost playing ping pong with a guitar player and with rhythm as the song goes along, and how to do that in the right way, and having a chance to develop that with Steve. And I haven't done that yet. Me and Al were able to do that because I've known Al for 30 years as well, and we both have similar backgrounds in like classical music and jazz and everything else. We throw everything into the cauldron. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm already excited about how it will result in October, if the good Lord's willing and the creek don't rise, as they say.
So this is your intention to start working on new material, or working on a new tour?
Working on the new tour, and who knows, there'll be new material in the new tour. A lot of things come out of jamming, and or if a song turns into a different direction, then so be it. I really enjoy that, the thrill of walking on the tightrope.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? Like, talking about sort of going in different directions, and you brought up pacing before. That's one of the things that I think is so impressive with the Archer, is that you have this very organic flow through the record. There are these sort of, I'm going to use the word dreamy too often in this interview, but there are the more kind of like spacey, dreamy tracks. You've got more rocking tracks. And then also, even within the tracks, they have these evolutions and these transitions. And I just think the way that it flows from the start to the finish is really beautiful. And one of the things as well, incidentally, I really like the way that you start the album with the title track, which is this very spaced out, floaty track. And it kind of made me wonder, it almost feels kind of like a challenge to the listener of going like, you might expect you're going to get like riff driven rock tracks like The Blue Garden or Third Man on the Moon, but instead you're going to get a very kind of spaced out opening, and you've got to be prepared for that journey. Was that kind of a conscious decision, or that's just the way that it worked out when you came to putting the album together?
It was a conscious decision that worked out when we put the album together. A bit of both, and just to to give it some kind of an original mark from the start. I know even from members of the band, they were questioning. You sure you want to open with that? And I thought there was something transportive about that as an opener, and it almost is an invitation and of what is going to happen. And so yeah, I hear what you're saying, and thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's I think the word transportive is really apt, because one of the things as well I find listening to the album, and maybe it's kind of running through your music in general. I kind of feel like I've just taken mushrooms and I'm just starting to feel them kicking in. That's kind of how I
Mhm.
feel with the Archer. It's got like this sort of, it's like there's something on the edges that's a little bit kind of mind warping, but it's not so overt and in your, like, it's not like the Butthole Surfers where it's just so crazy, but there's just something about it in general that feels a little bit like the edges of the universe are starting to peel.
Yeah, that's probably a part of it, isn't it? And you know that it's more of a poetic approach than a riff approach, I suppose, on this one. I thought it might hit home to people who are thinking these days. And you mentioned the word dream, and the album mentions the word dream quite a bit too. And I think that's part of the picture. I like to leave the interpretation up to the listener, and let it bring them to a place of their will, maybe, or their liking. I'm not sure, but yeah. Whatever the question was, I hope I'm answering it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it what you say makes sense about leaving it open to interpretation, because I do feel like it is an album of a lot of possibility, and there's a lot of space to take a lot of different things from it. Talking about dreams, I did want to ask you about the track I Had a Dream, which to me has got kind of a David Bowie flavor to it. I don't remember reading you talking about Bowie before, but is he Is he sort of a major inspiration or influence for you?
Yeah, I mean, how can you not be? I mean, he was something. You know, he really was an incredible artist, and all of the decisions he made over the years were following his gut and his mind, and nothing but admiration for the man. But I had a dream. Actually, is most of it a series of dreams that I've had that I remembered over the years. You know, most of those lines are for real,
Ah, okay,
and
interesting.
yeah, and then just it took about 2 minutes to throw those lyrics down because you know the dreams that I do remember that do stick with. You know, if you have some, I'm sure you can relate. If you can remember your dreams, there are some that you never forget
Totally.
that you wake up and you're and the you know it's like this, whoa, what was that, you know, what the hell happened? And so yeah, those are the things that were in my head when I jotted that down, and I wanted it to travel. And that actually was a jam. That piece of music was a jam that was done at the very beginning of recording of the record, and with very little editing, and it just open highway, if you will, you know, to throw down these the lyrics on it. Yeah,
That track actually came when you were in the process of starting to record the album.
yeah, and then ended, you know, got sang on towards the end of making of the album.
Out of curiosity, I mean, you've got decades of songwriting experience now, but in general, what's kind of the order for you when it comes to songwriting in terms of lyrics versus music? Or, you know, do they tend to come simultaneously, or it can completely vary from song to song?
Yeah, it varies. It's a real, you know, random process. I tend to write a lot of lyrics, or it could even be just two lines in a notebook, and that will become a song if there's a kind of a pace to those two lines that, in my mind, you know, kind of warrants somewhere to go. That's what it takes. And other times it's melody or music that's just floating around in the atmosphere. And if your antennas are up, you hear it. And you know, it is it varies. You know, it it's weird. It's magic, and I hope, and it's, you know, gifts that are given to you. And from time to time, it would be a gift of melody or rhythm. I'm a rhythmatist, and so you know, that's it.
Yeah, I definitely like that way of looking at creative inspiration as being like a gift from the universe that appears in a sort of unexplainable way, and you catch it where you can and try to crystallize it. So I wanted to talk about the production of the Archer, but in order to do so, I wanted to jump back again to the debut record. So you had Rick Rubin producing it, and I understand that you were not happy with the way the album turned out. And I was kind of wondering because it seems like your career as a producer came, you know, it developed after that album. So I'm kind of wondering, do you think that experience, or do you think if you hadn't had that experience, the trajectory you had as a producer would have been different? Did that sort of light a fire under you in some way that you went like, this is really not what I wanted. I want to be able to create the music that I hear in my head?
Actually, that's very perceptive. While we were recording the first album with Rick Rubin at Atlantic Studios in New York, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, a great old studio for the Atlantic Records that went back years and years, and the privilege of tracking there. At the same time we were tracking there, Keith Richards was mixing his first solo record, Talk Is Cheap. And so, you know, it was a matter of seeing Keith Richards in the hallway every day, and him and his band, and, you know, getting to the studio around 7 p.m. And we were there in the afternoon. So um, And at the time, making the first record was not a very pleasant experience. The band wasn't getting along, and Rick kind of enjoyed watching that conflict go down. And we used 70 reels of 2-inch tape to make that record. That's how many takes there were. And and to me, like, the second take of a particular song was the one where it felt great, and then 11 takes later we're still at it. So anyway, there was kind of a tension when we were together, but I'd be in the hallway when Keith and his band would be coming up the elevator to the studio, and there'd be this laughter on the you could hear the laughter on the elevator, and the door would open up, and you could tell they'd gone out to dinner and had some drinks, and they were like kind of holding each other up with their arms around their shoulders, laughing, and probably a little bit shit faced. And in the meantime, my session was misery, and I thought to myself, that's the way a band walks into the studio, the way Keith was walking in with Waddy Wachtel and Steve Jordan. And that's the vibe right there. Like, we've got this great job to do, and ain't this fun? And we're enjoying ourselves. They were called the expensive winos. That's how what they were, all their tape. Keith Richards can't put Keith Richards on the on label on his boxes of tape. It's a very dangerous thing for a Rolling Stone to do. It's inviting theft. So
Interesting.
their moniker at the time was the expensive winos, which they were, and that eventually came out, and he actually called the band that for a while. But it was seeing that difference between the vibe, and then when I had a chance to start producing, I thought, that's what I want to bring to other bands when I'm producing them, is that same joy. And yeah, that's the word. And not miserable, you know and so it did, as you say, adjust the way I was a producer after working on the first record. And yeah, I'm proud of that. I noticed it at an early time and did something about it, I think.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating insight. And so, obviously, then from the point that you started producing or co-producing records, there was the Next Masters of Reality record, Sunshine on the Suffer Bus. There were the Caius records, and then all the various other work that you've had over the years, taking you all the way up to the Archer. And I'm kind of curious, partly because it's been such a long time since the last Masters of Reality record. Was there anything in particular going into the latest one where you sort of thought like, oh, here are some sort of production ideas or some recording techniques that I want to try out that I hadn't tried out on a Masters of Reality record before?
Well, on the Archer, I'm not totally happy with the production. I'm somewhat satisfied with the songs, but there wasn't. Let's see, there was time to do it, but it was, for me, more of a lyrical focus on this and less of a production focus. I mean, I thought the drums could have been recorded better, but just the amount of time that people had to come to the desert to record, it was limited. And getting my bass player here twice from Spain, and my drummer here two or three times from New York. And so yeah, and Alan, who works all over the planet, getting him to the desert. And so it you know it was like an album of necessity in a way. And I think the production could be better. But as someone said to me once, when was the last time you heard a great song and said it sounded like shit? So that's my excuse, okay?
Then I guess that just means that I'm hearing great songs and I'm interpreting that as involving great production as well.
Yeah, maybe.
And so, something I'm curious about then, that I was just thinking while you're answering that question, you've put out at least one live album before, or at least one partial live album with Masters of Reality. Given, that you're not 100% satisfied with the sound of the album, have you considered that you would put out a live album from any of the tours that are happening at the moment?
To be decided, hopefully, and that would be great, if we get that good as a unit and working together and we find some magical moments that are glad to be recorded. Yeah, I'm more than happy to put that out. Yeah, I hope it does develop.
Yeah, that's cool to know. Now, I'm conscious of your time. Do you have time for a few more questions, or do you need to wrap this up?
No, you have a brain. Go ahead.
Excellent. So I'm sure that you've been asked about this topic before, but I am really fascinated to get a little bit of insight from you directly about working with Ginger Baker. So I understand that the way that he ended up becoming a part of Masters of Reality involved your manager and the fact that he was a polo player and Ginger Baker was a polo player. But I'm fascinated to hear what that sort of first experience was like meeting Ginger Baker.
Well, there's actually two experiences. Meeting him at my manager was having a barbecue at the time in his house, and Ginger was a guest at the barbecue, and I remember the manager saying, Ginger, this is Chris. He's in Masters of Reality. You should jam. And knowing, Ginger's reputation and background, his reaction to that was really what I almost wanted. He kind of rolled his eyes back in his head and growled something. And I found him really funny, and but the manager pursued it, and 3 or 4 days after that, he got Ginger's kit to a rehearsal studio and really said, you gotta jam with this guy, Ginger. And Ginger, who lived a couple hours north of Los Angeles at the time, drove down and we jammed. And we were both big podheads at the time. I mean, I probably still am, especially when I'm writing. In any case, we smoked a joint, and within about 3 or 4 minutes, that man had a smile from ear to ear, and it was incredible. You know, when leading up to those 3 or 4 days to jamming with him, I was so excited that I was going to play ping pong with somebody. Like I couldn't wait to 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 share rhythm play with him. Like I was so excited. Like, okay, I listened to this guy when I was a kid, and I know what his rhythm skills are like, and I can't wait to bounce things back and forth with him. And that's exactly what happened. And I think it surprised him. And that, I never played a Cream song in front of that man. I never played Sunshine of Your Love riff in front of him. It was always, the riff of the moment, the ones pulled out of the air. And then we would take that riff and turn it sideways and upside down and forwards and backwards and just have a ball playing rhythmic ping pong with riffs, mainly bluesy riffs. And, I mean, obviously he had a jazz background and I appreciated jazz as well. And it was a profound conversation one day. We were hanging out one day and Mahavishnu Orchestra was playing, John McLaughlin with Billy Cobham, and so I'd made a comment. I said, they thought they were gurus, though, Ginger. There was a kind of a pretense. I love Mahavishnu, but John McLaughlin at the time, the guitarist, had a pretense of being very spiritually infused by Indian music, which he was, but he kind of wore it like a badge or on his sleeve. And Ginger kind of corrected me, and in a way, he said, "Well, they were gurus, Chris." He goes, "But I like a good boogie," and that still puts a chill up my spine. that you can appreciate music that's complex and has a complex tonal content to it, but in general it's a simple boogie that you can have joy with. And that's where you're pliable, where your mind in this music is not so set on one thing, where you can take influence from everything, from classical music, from jazz, and apply that to a good boogie. And that's being a non pretensive musician. And so we got along on that level so well. And I miss that motherfucker.
Yeah, well, without wanting to drag you into talking about people that you miss, I did want to talk just a little bit about one of my idols who is lost now to the world, and at a great loss it is too. Mark Lanigan, one of my favorite singers of all time. You worked extensively with him, and I just wondered if you had any stories or anecdotes you could share of your time working with him.
Yeah, it runs deep, you know, years of hanging with Mark. Sometimes, a 2 3 year gap between working with him. Now that he's not with us, I look at his catalog and I'm more in awe than ever. Probably feel the same way about him as you do. The anecdotes are probably endless, and ranging from very intense and heavy, sometimes sadness, to to having a lot of fun and laughter because he's a brilliant man. And so spot on in what his vision was like. So it runs the gamut, man. It's really hard to pull one occasion out, especially when asked that question. It's like asking, what's your favorite passage from the Bible? you know, and all I can say it was, a privilege. I'm sorry I can't provide much more than that.
No, no, no. That's all good. I'm gonna let you go in a minute, but I wanted to just share one little thing with you. So I interviewed, I think it was at the end of 2023 or the beginning of 2024. I interviewed the band Scream, and then I interviewed the singer Peter Stahl a second time to talk about their latest record, DC Special, which I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite records of that year. And there was I think it was just one track in particular on that album where he really reminded me of you in terms of his singing style. And so I put this to him and I said, look, there's this track on the album that really reminds me of Chris Goss, who's one of my favorite singers. Is he an influence for you? And he said basically that you are one of his favorite singers, and he was delighted that I drew that comparison. So I just wanted to let you know that Peter Stahl loves your work, if you didn't already know that.
Oh, that's lovely. I know Pete well, and we see each other in the desert occasionally when he comes out to work. And I didn't realize that it was got so specifically mentioned like that. And it's lovely to hear. He his approach and his character is a model as well. And I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad to share it. Chris, thank you so much for your time. It's really an honor to be able to talk with you about your music and your art. You are an inspiration to me. I think you are an amazing creative mind, and I love your music. And yeah, I think the Archer is tremendous, and I will definitely make sure I don't miss the opportunity to see Masters of Reality next time you are somewhere in my part of the world.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ghost culture. I like it.
Thank you so much. All the best.
You too.